to all of you also from my side. Oops, see how, yeah. So I just, as Leandro mentioned, I have been working as a fundraiser for over 16 years now. And I had my first contact on think tanks at the beginning of this year when I was asked to speak at the winter school for think tankers in Geneva. And so that's how the relationship came along also with on think tanks. It's going to be a challenge to share, a lot of fundraising in a short time, but I think the goal of our presentation is to give you like input, and then you can ask questions. And as Leandro said, I will be there and available to answer more questions in the week to come. Now, what will we be talking about? Just really short fundraising basics, because I know that most of you know about fundraising. Then it's like, where are you now? How to start with fundraising, just to find out where most of you are. And then we're going to really, in the other points, how to finding the right funders, the whole asking process, how to engage with them, because it's not only about finding funders, it's also about keeping them. So we're looking at the donor journey and the role of communications. And then what kind of tools do you have, or what kind of tools exist to support you and your think tank in fundraising communications? Now, if you have questions, you can always send a question by chat. I will hopefully be able to see it, but also Leandro will be supporting me. But I will also be asking questions in between to you, like if everything is clear. So maybe start off with this image here. Maybe your think tank is a little bit like this. You started and you built like a foundation, maybe the first story, and now you need more money to build the next stories, make extensions. And this is where a lot of, not only think tanks are, but a lot of organizations are. We realize, hey, we need more money because we want to expand. There's more demand, but how can we finance what we can offer? So I want to go into the first poll with you and ask Leandro to share the poll on the screen. And I would like to ask you, what is your experience in searching for new funders?
Okay, so some colleagues are sharing their answers. Let's wait.
Oh, that's good.
Seconds.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
To share the results, do I have to stop sharing my screen, or?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
You see the results there?
No, I don't see any results at all.
Okay, so maybe it's...
I'll stop sharing quickly. Yes, okay, good. So we have, thank you very much for giving me the feedback. We have but nobody saying it's easy. Yes, I from my over 60 years experience, I also agree with that. But sometimes I do hear people saying, we don't have problems to find funds. 20% of you say they have no experience. 40% say it's very difficult with poor results, and the other 40, it's hard work, but we're seeing growing results. Now, my goal is also, part of this webinar is to help you to move up, not that it's going to become easier, but also that you will be able to see growing results in your efforts to find new funders. Okay, I'll close this here and share my screen again. what is fundraising, or what are the basics? I think when I share, when I talk about fundraising, I always like to use the analogy of a farmer, because just like a farmer working on a field, you need a field because that's your market. Then you have to work, you need people, you need time. Money, unfortunately, money doesn't grow on the trees. And next to the labor, you need seeds. The farmer needs seeds. Before something grows, he has to distribute something, his seeds. That is also for a think tank. That's investments, money. And you also need tools. It's like fundraising tools, know-how. The farmer has his tractor, his horse maybe, whatever. And I think with this analogy, it also helps you as a fundraiser to speak with others about it's not like just easy to find money, but there are several aspects of fundraising. And I just want to start with another poll right now before we go into the details, as what does your organization see fundraising? Leandro, do you already have the results?
Yes.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you very much for your feedback. So I'm glad nobody sees fundraising as something that we should avoid, because I bump into this very often, that people say, oh, no, if we don't have to do fundraising, don't want to. But nobody is really keen on doing it and likes doing it. So would somebody like to share who wrote, we have different points of view on fundraising? I mean, I think this is one of the main problems I see also in organizations, that finding a common ground for fundraising. Would somebody like to share a thought or a message?
Yes. So, any of the colleagues want to jump in and explain a little bit more about this response? Otherwise, we can continue, Marc-Andre. We can come back to this later on.
Okay.
Hello.
I think I will.
We have a volunteer here.
Yeah, this is Pablo from Macías, Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
We answered the third option. We do it because we have to. The reason why we answered that way is because we are a think tank. What we do and we want to do is do research, and make proposals and deliver those proposals. But to do that, we need money. So we see the fundraising as a vehicle to get the results that we want. It's not our main activity. That's the reason why we are thinking this.
Okay, thank you for that input, Pablo. I think I'll also catch up on that. I think this is one of the main points. Fundraising should never be the main activity of a think tank, but I think it's also about, I will also try to share how fundraising can be like integrated into your daily work. Leandro, I cannot share my screen because you're sharing yours.
Oh, sorry. You can try now.
Yeah. No.
So I think you need to, maybe you can stop the sharing screen option. Can you stop it?
You are viewing C. Vergara's screen right now, it says. No.
I see we watch an internet page, Zoom page.
Yeah, that's not my screen.
Ah, okay. I think it's, oh, Carmen. I think it was Carmen. Okay, maybe you can try sharing now. Let's see.
Yeah, now it's working. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
so,
now it's right.
Now it's okay, good. So I'll continue.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So starting with fundraising, I'm aware that this is something that, especially if you're not like a full-blooded fundraiser and you love to do it, it's something a little bit awkward. And like Pablo said, yes, we have to do it because we need money for our research. And I think one of the main questions also, or question you have to ask was when starting with fundraising, or probably also already received some funds, like how many different sources of funding does your think tank already have? And the next question is, how is the fundraising readiness of your think tank? Now, fundraising readiness is defined as how open is not only are you as a person, but the whole organization, the whole think tank and the board, how open are they to do fundraising? And then in this term, what is your image of a fundraiser? That was also my question when I asked, one of the points was we have different points of view on fundraising, because I think this is very crucial. If you inside your organization have discussions, I mean, in a more negative way, like, oh, I think fundraising should be like this, I know we shouldn't go out too much, and we have to be more in the background. And I think these images of a fundraiser, also of the think tank, they have an effect on the implementation of fundraising in your think tank. Because my question is, what is the image finally of fundraising and a fundraiser in your think tank? Is it like a beggar or a burglar? I mean, I can just share, when I started with fundraising myself, I told my mother, and she was like, oh, you're one of these modern beggar monks. And I said, no. But it's a little bit about like that. If I view myself as when I'm a fundraiser, like I'm a beggar, I'm begging for money, then that gives the people a wrong impression. Or I've also seen people saying, well, they have to give us money, and you're supposed to, and people get frustrated because they don't receive money. It's like more like the burglar mentality. And I think we have to move out of these, like, and see the right, see a fundraising and a fundraiser in the right way, because this has mainly, the way I feel personally about fundraising, my organization has an effect on how I receive money, or how also I am towards others when asking for money. I just saw from C. Vergara that in our region, fundraising for think tanks is not part of our culture, not part of our DNA. It takes a lot of commitment from our board and researchers to move on with fundraising. I totally agree with that. And I think this is a case in many countries, like in Switzerland also, even if we are a wealthy country, but speaking about money is not very common, and asking for money is even less common. So, but I think there are ways, and I would want to show you like what kind of ways you have to ask for money. First of all, it's about setting up a fundraising culture. And I think it's very important that I think the first point you probably all agree with. You have something unique to offer. You can say we as think tank have something unique to offer because we are doing something to help the health system or the education system or whatever. And then the second point is not only we have something unique to offer, but we are proud of what we do. And I think every person who is not really convinced that they're doing something good is not really a good salesperson. I mean, I'm not talking about salesperson in terms of fundraiser, but in general, even if you are a speaker and you go and you speak about it, well, I'm not, I have a job and I'm not really convinced about it. People will feel that. But if you're proud of what we do, that also, the spark goes over to the other people, the other person. The other thing, the next point is, and I also want to emphasize that, is we are partners as a think tank. Now, partners is not, I'm not a beggar and I'm not a burglar, I'm a partner. Like, when I go out and meet people, even, for, let's say, even for a nonprofit organization in Switzerland, I am there because I can offer them something and I'm not asking for money. I am there, said, I have an interesting deal for you and I want to offer you to become partner of this deal or this project.
Yes, Mark, let me add here that I promised to help you with the chat, that Bruno from Investigación para el Desarrollo in Paraguay, he also suggests this idea of, he says that they see themselves as someone looking for a partner to produce research and together promote development and fight poverty. So I think that fits directly in what you were saying, that in your fundraising culture, see yourself as a partner, not as a burglar or the other images that you were talking about, just to reinforce that point.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that's something very important, that we are doing a good job as a think tank or as a non-government, non-profit organization, and our work is just as valuable or maybe even more valuable than selling, I don't know, chocolate bars. And so that's why, because of I'm proud of what we do and I view myself as a partner, we as a think tank are not afraid to ask for support. Finally, it's not a support in terms of like a beggar, but that our project needs external funding. And this is the last point, is then also something that can be maybe a bit awkward for everybody, but I want to put it in the right perspective. It's not only the fundraiser in your organization who does the fundraising. Everyone is in a certain degree a fundraiser. Now, what do I mean by that? This means that everybody has contact with people from outside, and they meet somebody and then they say, oh, I just met my neighbor, he works for this company and he works in the corporate social responsibility department. Oh, cool. So I'm aware that I can make a connection. Maybe if I'm not the one selling the project, but I am also a representative. Every staff member is a representative of your think tank and can be trained to have like open eyes and ears of opportunities where contacts can be made, and with the help then of maybe the president of the board or the fundraiser, the contact is set up. Are there any questions regarding fundraising culture up to now?
Well, may I come back to a comment that Alejandro made some slides ago about it's more about how if you have different research agendas in your organization. So different researchers working with their own research agendas. He said that in his organization, that difficult is the way they can coordinate fundraising actions. Would you say, is that something that has to do with the culture? I mean, I think it has to do also with whether the organization has a centralized fundraising approach or more of the decentralized approach. But I don't know, Marc-Andre, if you think that can be linked to the culture of the organization in terms of fundraising. So different research agendas and difficulties of coordinate fundraising efforts.
That's a very good question. I've worked also on different occasions with, let's say, universities, also larger universities, and they also have this problem. And even in Switzerland, we have finally it's I think it's less a question of culture, but more like an organizational question that. If you have, like, in every department of a university or every research group, they have their own fundraiser. My experience is that the fundraising is less effective if every research group does it by themselves. Now, what I've seen working better is that there's like a centralized research, centralized fundraising, which supports different research groups or research departments. But there are people who are also trained in the research groups to be open to opportunities for fundraising. But they don't have to do, if you have to write a proposal for a foundation, then it's better that it's centralized and it comes with a certain, people knowing how to do it. Then, like, everybody does it differently, and then one research group gets money and the other one doesn't get money because they forgot to mention important things in their proposal. You see, so I think it's a little bit more about that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also see a very good comment here from Pablo again, which he highlights as a big challenge, that moment when you need to pass from giving service or conducting projects for free. I mean, you have support, but you offer to your counterparts for free. They don't need to pay for that because someone else, a big donor, is paying for that. When you need to pass from that modality to charging a fee for those services. That's what Pablo highlights as a big challenge. I know his organization is trying to come up with an offer, with capacity building offer to be sold for different stakeholders. But in the past, they have been doing that with support of a donor. So how do you see that challenge, Marc-Andre? I don't know, maybe you would prefer to come back to this later, but I think this is a challenge that all the think tanks in the room are facing or will face in the near future.
I think I can go into detail later, but I maybe just want to pick up a point. I see also this challenge that, let's say, also other organizations have. And what I personally, for example, done myself once is that even if I offer a service for free, I said it would cost this here, like the regular cost, but this is like the deduction is maybe like 50%, 80%, 100% because of the financing through the foundation XYZ. And I think that is very important to sort of like to communicate that there's a price tag on services, even if my think tank is funded, through a large grant, that that even this is part. Then I'll go in. I'll pick that up also when we talk about communications about the service cost. That there is a cost behind all the services, and we can provide this service for the moment free of cost because of the funding of through a grant or whatever. But I think it's also important to continue to be transparent. Say in the future we will have to start asking for a service fee for certain services. I know it's not easy. It's always, if things start costing that were for free, same thing online. It's always a challenge, but I think it's worth trying what works and what doesn't work, because I think if we give an added value to someone else, if it's a corporate, the government, or whoever, and they see the value, they are also willing to pay for it. Okay, so I'll go into the next slide about finding the right funders. Now, I think there are different segments of funders or donors. One that you probably know is companies. Another one is foundations. Then we have like public bodies, and these can be from universities to churches to different kind of, it depends on, I think, also on the country, what is registered as a public body. We also have the governments themselves. I mean, not only international or national governments in other countries, but the own government has money to support projects. We have the private donors. And I think this is also an area where we can talk about, because there are also more and more private donors who want to invest money long-term on sustainable projects. But usually, and this is also, I think, you have to be aware of, many private donors, if they have like a certain agenda, they make a foundation. They don't give directly, some do, but if it's strategic, they also set up a foundation and then work through their foundation. Another point connected with the private donors, this might be also interesting, but this is something very strong in Switzerland, is legacies. When people die and say, I want part of my the money that I leave behind going to a good cause. And this is something that is, I mean, we have like the baby boomers getting older now, and I think it also varies depending on the legislation, the laws in different countries, how legacies are treated. And this is where, at the moment, for example, like in Switzerland, where I live, a lot of money is coming into organizations. But one of the main questions also is, are you looking for the right funders outside of your country? Because there is money to find outside of your country. But the other thing is, can you also find money in your country? Now, the way to identify like potential funders is, first of all, this is the way I work in general, is which donor markets fit to my cause or to your think tank in your case. Because not every donor market, the donor markets I mentioned before, like public, companies, private persons, companies, government, the different donor markets are good for specific causes or work better with some causes, others work with other causes. Then, which players in those markets, if you let's, for example, you define corporates as an interesting market, Then you define which players in that market fit to your cause the best. And then the next step would be, what are or where are their networks of these players, of these companies, and how do we approach them? And this is where the networking part starts. And this is not something that you just do from today to tomorrow, but it's long-term relationship building. And I've also highlighted it's a lot of work. I just can't go just to one meeting, maybe like of a business association, think I'm going to bring back 5 new contacts. Maybe I have 2 new contacts, but then I follow up with them, and it's a relationship. It's like I said, you will meet finally behind each foundation, company, government. There are always human beings, and it's about building relationships with these people. And when you have a good relationship, they can open up their networks themselves. So it's like a drop of water going into a drop going into the water, and then it goes. You have the circles going around afterwards. The other thing is, and this is also what I do when working. If I'm not sure about a potential funder, I exchange with other organizations, or in your case, I would recommend to exchange with other think tanks. What have you for experience with certain markets, with certain donors, with certain foundations? And I think mentoring, which is also, I think, part of another course, is also very good. If you have somebody who is more experienced, who can take you by the hand. This is something like I do in Switzerland a lot with younger fundraisers. I'm a mentor and help them open up my contacts to foundations, to other organizations, and so on. I would like to give you an example of a market analysis I'm doing right now at the moment. And just to give you like a real life example of how you could also adapt it. First of all, what I did was, for this example, I was given the list of the excluded markets of this organization. So it's very important. You might maybe have a list of markets as a think tank that you say, well, we don't work with the weapons industry, we don't work with the banking industry. It depends on where your focus is. Then, after you've excluded these markets, you go and define top 3 potential markets you would see as markets for your think tank. I'm talking here, this example, corporates. So you have different markets like finance, retail, construction, chemical, etc. And then out of these, like you say, define the potential top 3 markets. This is what we did. And then per market, there's statistics, lists of the top 50 to 100 corporates. We go through them, and then we ranked the top 5 of each market and say, okay, this corporate would be interesting because they have a certain size. We look at, where are they located? How accessible are they in terms of information about the organization, about the corporate? And then when we've defined them, what we did also, the next step was identifying contact persons. And we have like LinkedIn that helps us here. Xing is like the German-speaking version. It's in LinkedIn. Xing in the German-speaking Europe it's much larger than LinkedIn. So these are like these business social networks that help us identify the right persons. And what I've also seen working with my teams is that if you contact somebody with an offer through one of these business networks, you get a meeting much faster than just sending an email, because they get drowned by emails, but the contact through the business network is something that works better. But I will come in the next slide to that. You have to have a good offer. And now this is the point. When you've defined some people you want to contact, you have to you have to have an offer that you can give them. Now, the question is, what will we offer to the donor or to the funder? And there are always two sides of an offer. First of all, there's a rational part, jobs, surveys, trainings, whatever, the figures, what you're doing with your think tank or a project, a research project. But then there's always an emotional part. I hope so. Also, in some, and I know it's sometimes very hard to in something very heavily research-based project that you try to find the emotional part. But I think this is also a good challenge. Where is the emotion? Where can we pack in something emotional? What we want to do with our, for example, what we want to do with our results. Because finally, as I mentioned, people deciding are also human beings. So if you have a good story to tell, and I think this is very important here, you have, it's not like just giving figures. Don't throw a research paper at them and say, oh, we need money for the next research. But more, I'd rather say, listen, we did a research. You'll find the research paper in the appendix, but with the results of this, we were able to do this, and it touched so many lives of people. And you know what? I also even have the experience that working with photos is something very rewarding, because if you just send in an offer, just a lot of text, that's one part. But if it's one or two photos, not too many, that's not good either. But you also use images. That helps also to underline what you're doing and gives the people who decide on funding a good view of what you're doing. The next part is then, when you have the offer, is the asking process. And I think it's very important that when you have identified somebody in an organization, if it's a foundation, a corporation, a public body, government, that you try to get to know the potential funder as a human being. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but it's always very helpful. From my experience, it's about networking. If it already starts if I know how the person looks like. When I do a first contact, I research the internet. I have the photo of the person generally in front of me, and then I can ask them. I said, oh, I know about maybe the age, or I can assume how old this person is. And then maybe I will also meet somebody maybe at a business event. And that's also very important of knowing, like, oh, this person has his birthday on this day. And that's part of the profiling, just already knowing the birthday. And it's not like being pushy, but saying, oh, hey, I wish you a nice birthday, send a nice card, something like that. And then people are reminded of you, respective your organization. That's one process on the personal level. The other level is informing the potential funder or donor of what you're doing. And there are different ways of doing that. Maybe you have a magazine. Maybe when you have lunch, you bring the newest research paper you have, something like that. Then the next step would also be getting the person, him or her, involved with your organization. And involvement can be already, would you like to receive our newsletter? That is also maybe something really basic in involvement with the organization. And then I think, and the one important part is also preparing the potential funder for a donation. Because before you ask, it's also one question that will usually come up is, oh, how are you funded? And then it's already about, before you ask, you can share, oh, you know, we have our annual report here, and we have a foundation or a grant that has been given to us. It's running out at the end of this year. You don't have to ask yet, but it's important that the funder or donor knows in advance that you are an organization that is looking for money. And then the last point I have here for the asking process, and I think this is something very important: ask. Finally, you ask, and it's not, you don't do this all in one evening, all these points here, but there is a point where you you get the opportunity, and you also have to take this opportunity to ask if this company, finally the person at this company, will support your think tank or the project that you want to have funded with a certain amount. And I think this is something very important. Just because you share what you're doing doesn't imply that the person will say, oh, I'm going to support you. Yes, this happens from time to time. But I know a lot of organizations who get frustrated because, oh, you know, I shared with them what we're doing, but nobody wants to support us. Well, then I always say, well, did you ask if they would support you? And most of the time I get the answer, no, I didn't ask. But I think if you ask people, and this is also the same with me, if people ask me if I can support, then I can decide, do I want to support this project or this organization or not? I think and then you can also be very specific. You say, listen, we need, for the next 3 years, we need funding for a certain amount. Or, and I think this is also a challenge, but this is also, let's say, this is not like basic fundraising. This is also asking for a free donation is harder than asking for a specific donation. If you say, okay, we need 10,000 or 50,000 US dollars for this research project, that's a specific donation, a specific funding. But if you have like core funding, which is more or less free donation, you can use it for what you need because the donor trusts you and your organization. That is something that is very challenging. And I think it's also, it depends a lot on your offer also. So how you develop your offer, is it for specific funding or free donation? This is something that you have to decide beforehand. Are there any questions up to now regarding the let's say the process of identifying donors, funders, and asking them?
So while the colleagues think about questions about this, I would like to come back to a question posed by Carmen some minutes ago. She asked about when you were talking about legacies, Marc-Andre. She says
I see your question there. Legacies or requests are very hard to propose. Yes. I think, yes, I totally agree with that. And also, this is something very cultural also. And like in some countries, it's easier to talk about a legacy or a bequest, or about, let's say, when somebody dies, or and in some countries it's not. Now, Switzerland, where I live, has also gone a little bit through this process. Like maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like, ooh, you share about, you know, even an ad for doing a legacy is something like, oh, this is going too far. But now, in the meantime, a lot of nonprofit organizations offer, for example, their donors or potential donors a brochure on how they can set up a legacy, which also not only leaves money for the family, but also where they can give part of the money to a certain organization. This is one way. And I think it's also the way you communicate. I mean, also in your annual report, in many organizations have in their annual report, when they have income, they note income from legacies. So that's also part of the communication. And it's, I'm just looking also whether the questions coming in, if you have to use a certain kind of language, I guess. It depends, I think, if you need, I think it has, like I said, it has to do with the culture. And I cannot decide on, you know, what language works best, but I think in general, and this is the way I work or I've learned to work, leaving money behind for a good cause. Don't put the money, don't put the focus on, oh, somebody's going to die, but it's about making people happy. At the end of my life, I want to continue my good work even at the end, after I am not here on this earth anymore. And so it has a little bit to do about the language I use, the metaphors I use in communicating this. But I think you would also have to sort of like test, and this is something I would also discuss with other organizations first, like what is your experience, and not even other think tanks, but even other nonprofit organizations in your country. Hey, what are your experiences with legacies? How do you communicate this, and so on? Any other questions? I just saw one here from Pablo. How can we deal with the fact that most of donors in our countries have their main office in northern countries, so they do not have flexibility to give support beside what they have planned before? I think the goal is also to expand your donor base. I am aware that there are several funders or several think tanks being funded through, like you mentioned, Pablo, northern countries who have their offices in your country. But I think the challenge, and also I would also say the beauty of it, is finding new funders in your country who also know more about the challenges that you're in. And this, the benefit is that you need less explaining because the people know about the situation, the cultural aspects, and so on in your country. So I will continue right now with the next slide, and it's about, after the ask, continue with engaging with funders, the donor journey. First of all, it's about, I think this is really important, saying thank you. Maybe you might laugh, but I've heard stories, I've experienced it myself, that even organizations receive, I mean, large sums and don't even say thank you. I think this is crucial. First you say thank you. Then I think it's about proving that you have used the money for what it was intended for. You produce a documentation of the project, a report or financial statement that you can also give to the donor, to the funder. Recognize the donor. Like, we ask all our donors, like major donors and foundations, corporates, when I'm working with MSF, how did you say, Leandro? Médicos Sin Fronteras. I hope we got it right.
Yes, that's
Doctors Without Borders. That we ask them if they want to be noted in our annual report, and some say yes, and some say no. But it's another opportunity of recognizing the donor. And I think what is also very important, and then not only for the donor but also for you, show the impact what the donation did, the funding did, because this will also help you not only for making the donor happy, but also of attracting other donors, saying, listen, with this investment, you can achieve this here. And it's also very important to stay in regular contact with your funder. For example, through events, you have an event and you invite them, and continuing the networking even after donation. I always say after the donation is before the next donation. So the goal is to win a funder for a recurring donation. And I think that is, and it's easier maybe with some groups of funders and harder with others, because, like, for example, companies, they might give like 1 year, 2 years, and then you have to go back again. But that's where the networking, the relationship building is very important. Good. Fundraising tools and examples. Just want to go through here very well quickly, because I'm going to answer your questions afterwards. You have, for the different donor markets, you can use different kind of tools. Now, some tools are not really special, because, like a project proposal, annual report, a letter, phone calls, that is still the basic stuff, because a lot of the funding you do is still one-on-one. But we also have new possibilities with digital tools. This is what I want to share with you. But what is very important, every tool needs an investment. Tool needs investments. I mean, even if you write a proposal, the investment is time, and finally, time is money. Or if you want to have a digital tool, you might need to pay a certain fee to use it. Now, some things are pretty much for free, but you still need to learn how to use it. Google for Nonprofits is something. They have a whole suite for nonprofits. I just want to share this part here, the YouTube nonprofit program, because if you do something, sharing it with a film is something very effective. Crowdfunding, there are different platforms. You probably heard of Kickstarter, Indiegogo, but there are also local crowdfunding platforms. One in Switzerland, which I know very well, is called 100 Days, because every funding project is open for 100 days. And I just want to share something that a group of persons did. It's actually they did a crowdfunding rooms for refugees, because we had a growing number, also in Switzerland, a growing number of refugees. And a lot of private people were saying, well, I have a room in my house or my apartment I could open to refugees. And it wasn't as easy to take a refugee home or a family. And so there was a group around the Church Alliance. They said, okay, we're going to do a crowdfunding to fund one person for 1 year, so that we can get all the paperwork done, so that it's easier to allow people to make room for refugees in their own homes, because there were a lot of administrative hurdles there. And the best thing was, the goal was 55,000. They made 62,323 Swiss francs, which is approximately the same in dollars. And it was done in less than 100 days. So this shows also the possibility of crowdfunding. But this was also alliance. It was spread pretty wide. It was not only this, because this group has a small base of email addresses, but they work with the media. The media spoke about it. Other people joined. They shared the link. And this is also how, for example, crowdfunding can be for, let's say, for a person. This is where also you can use email tools such as Create Send, or you probably know MailChimp. But if you want to work also on the funding base, on a broader funding base, you need these kind of tools to share and interact with potential donors. The last point is there are also foundation databases, which you know, probably Foundation Directory Online, Foundation Search, fondation.org, this is a French site. Or in Switzerland, there is Stiftung Schweiz. This is a large, there are like 13,000 foundations on that platform, all foundations actually in Switzerland. And then you can search by topics and things like that. But something also very specific, and this is something that might help you for your funding, is there are a lot of universities that have their own tools for finding grants. Now, this is, I did list all these universities because I think it depends on like where, on which topic, what is the cause of your think tank, which topic are you working on, which universities refer to that worldwide, and then you can go to those websites of those universities and usually have funding tools or links or lists of how you can get grants also from them. So that's in short about the fundraising tools, and now I'm really available for questions from your sides and or comments.
Thanks, Marc-Andre. So that was an interesting overall picture of how organizations can approach new funders, starting with understanding their own culture, and based on that, what would be the best funders for them, and then moving on more practical tips and tools to approach the funders. So let's use the next 20 minutes for the colleagues to pose questions. Some of you have been sharing comments and queries in the chat. If you feel some of those questions got lost among the presentation, please, this is the time to come back to them. And yes, it remains open for any question you have on Marc-Andre's presentation and also related topics. Mm-hmm.
Hello, Heidi has one question.
Yes, go ahead.
On those pages that you show to us, is in order to find grants or partners?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat again?
In those pages that you recently showed to us in the last part.
This one here?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can find there some grants, projects. Can you tell us more about that pages?
Okay. What I can do finally, you know, also in let's say in the blog or something like that, that I will put together some stuff. I can give you some links, like for the Foundation Directory Online, the Foundation Search. But it depends on, like, some foundations, they are in different countries, these directories, and some fund projects only in the country where they are, and some also fund projects outside of that country. So I cannot tell you exactly which foundation or which grant-making organization will give money, but there you have the possibility to search for foundations or grant-making organizations that could support your cause. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, then I have one question here. What is your experience with European foundations and Australian donors in Latin America? Okay, I can, my experience, I can give you my experience with European foundations. I don't have any experience with Australian donors, but I know that I can especially speak with for, let's say, European foundations, Swiss foundations. There are a lot of Swiss foundations supporting projects in Latin America. In general, let's say, especially Switzerland, they have a very good view of Latin America. A lot of Swiss have also, traveled countries in Latin America, and that is why there are several foundations, for example, in Switzerland, but also on the European level, that support projects or topics, themes in Latin America. I would say mainly, we may have to add mainly, let's say more like development projects, but this would also have to be something that to search deeper, like on, let's say, policy making and advocacy, and so there's also support to be found. Yes.
Great. What else? So, Marc-Andre, I have. Oh, okay, let's pick this one from Alejandro.
Yeah, Alejandro just asked the question if I think that for a think tank it would be necessary to have like a unit or department entirely dedicated to funding activities. If, let's say, it depends, I think it depends on the size of the think tank. If you're like only 5 people, then don't think about having your own department. But if you have like a certain size as a think tank, then it would be helpful to have like at least maybe somebody working 50% or even higher percentage for fundraising and having a focus on that. And setting up like sort of like what are our rules, or what is our structure to raise funds. There are large costs, because if you have somebody raising funds on the other side, it also releases the people who are doing the research of tasks that maybe they don't want to do, they're not gifted to do, so they can, the researchers can focus on the research, and the fundraisers focus on what they're supposed to do, is raising funds. Yes, it may be like it's, yeah, like I probably say, and that maybe not a problem, but necessary to have someone to do fundraising. Yes, I would, if it's possible. This is what I usually propose, but I understand if it's like a smaller think tank, then maybe you should have somebody who's dedicated to do that, who's, let's say, has more the ability to do it. Because if everybody is more like has to write proposals and things like that, then the proposals, like I mentioned before, look different. We have a question here. Can you talk a little bit more about board engagement strategies? Yes, that is always that is a big challenge. I have right now, I've been asked to help a larger organization in Switzerland about involving the board in fundraising. And I think it also has to do, if you go back to the slide it's on the Moodle then, about the fundraising readiness. Fundraising readiness not only starts with you and, let's say, the people working for the think tank, but also with the board. Because usually on the board, this is the way it's in Switzerland, there are people who have connections, let's say, to politics, to business. And here there are, well, I see different kinds of organizations. For example, UNICEF in Switzerland. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about UNICEF in Geneva. That's the international part, but UNICEF Switzerland, they have a board made up very strategically of people from different business areas to open up markets and new donors. That is very strategic, and others, they do not do it that way. But I think if you decide as a think tank, as an organization, that you want to open up, you want to involve as many people as possible, I mean, not directly for the fundraising, but to open up new doors, then you will also have to talk about board engagement strategies in terms of, if you look for somebody, a new person on your board, then is this a person who can open up doors or not for think tank, let's say for new funds. And as I mentioned before, he doesn't have to do the fundraising, but he can introduce the fundraiser of the organization to a certain person in a company, for example. Any more questions? Yes, go ahead, Alejandro. Okay, no problem if you don't have a mic. You can just write it down, and I'll wait until you have written your question down.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I have a question. So I've noticed that we are asking a lot of things. Okay, let's take Alejandro's one. You need to elaborate more, Alejandro, or it's...
Yeah, I think it's about the conflict of interest between private firms and independence of research. I think it goes, I'm just going, oops, I'm going back. Finding the right funders. I think it's about, it has a lot to do about this here too, that we, like I said, which donors fit to our think tank. Are there excluded markets, first of all? And this is a question I have to ask myself every time I do a market research. And then defining the top 3 potential markets or companies, and you will also have probably like things in your fundraising culture, or let's say in your working culture, say, okay, we want to be totally independent. For example, now as working for fundraising development with MSF, we are independent, our pharmaceutical companies, because we are a large consumer. We need a lot of medical supplies, and to stay independent and not be biased by one producer, we do not accept donations from pharmaceutical companies, because our people on the field take the decisions what is the best medicine, and not the supplier of any kind of medicine because they gave us a large donation. So these are like rules that we have to apply to, but these are rules that we set up ourselves. And the conflict of interest is also, I think, are you willing to accept money from a certain market area or a certain corporation or not? And if you're like in the environmental, working in the environmental area, and then you are accepting money from a corporation that pollutes the environment a lot, you know, I think these kind of things are things that you have to discuss before you go and set out an offer. I know from Greenpeace, for example, because they have their office very close to where I work, they do not accept any donations from any kind of corporations in Switzerland to stay independent. And probably you will also have to find out what this means for your research. What could have an impact on your independence. Did this answer your question, Alejandro?
Okay. I have two questions. The first one, Marc-Andre, is that during your work as an advisor on these issues, if you have come up with a sort of tool or, I don't know, software or something that can help organizations understand the funding landscape and make decisions based on that. Is there something that, or an exercise or something that you have come across that would help in that way, or is more like handicraft approach?
Well, in general, what I usually use, it's not rocket science. What I usually, when I work also with other organizations, I work a lot with the SWOT matrix.
Okay.
And this is something, in general, when I look at funding possibilities, we say, okay, what is the SWOT matrix for this organization? Because the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats are always different for each organization. But this is a tool I use very often. And then, it's called DOFA en Español. Okay, that's good. Okay, thanks for that. And then from there, I define afterwards where are our strengths, and then it's like the basic questions also. Where are we? Where do we want to go to, and how do we get there? And this is where the SWOT analysis helps me to define the strategy.
Great. Yes. I also.
And I think something else, it's not only me, even if I have a lot of expertise in fundraising like that in Switzerland, but what I do, I speak a lot with the people in an organization, because the people in the organization, so if you have like a think tank of 10 people, ask what they think of, maybe they will come up with cool ideas, you see, because they are, and all of a sudden they realize, I have this idea, yes, we could try this. So I think that is something that can also, it's like you said, basic tools, no rocket science.
Yes, no, I understand, and I also think that it's always good to start with a SWOT analysis before embarking in an intervention. Okay, and the second, I don't know if I want to use the time that I would prefer the colleagues to. Okay, so Carmen here has a comment for Alejandro. I don't know, Marc-Andre, if you want to go through this.
We identified the need to prove a certain situation that impacts our workforce. To prove a certain situation that paints our workforce, to big companies to invite them to fund a specific research that later on allows our think tank to make a policy. I think that's a good idea, because like I said, I shared before, every think tank has something unique to offer, and I think you have to be aware of that, and then that gives you because you're aware that you're doing something unique. You can also offer to certain stakeholders something that they need, and this is how this helps you develop your offer. So I know I'm very vague right now because it depends really. It's specifically in terms of what is your cause, how is your market, how are the legal aspects in your country. It depends on all of these kind of things. Any more questions? Leandro, did you have another question you said?
Well, I can. Okay, there is one more for Carmen. Please.
Oh no, you don't ask too many questions, Carmen. This is what the session is for. It's not good not to ask, you see.
So let's wait for Carmen.
Yeah.
Also for the other colleagues and also for Carmen, remember that there is one more week in case you want to pose other questions if we don't have time today, because
that's right. If I just also want to encourage you, if you all of a sudden you come up with a question, just drop it on the Moodle and I will try to answer it. Well, I will answer it, but I will also try to answer it that you get a good answer. Okay, that's a good question. Find information sources to understand the actual trends on funding and corporate social responsibility. I can see if I can come up with something, Carmen, because I think it also the trends on funding and corporate social responsibility. I think it also depends. Like corporate social responsibility is something pretty big in the United States, for example. In Switzerland, I would say it's already past its peak. There are some companies that are still doing it. They have like a corporate social responsibility unit, but that a lot of companies are also seeing it as a cost factor for the moment. So, but I will write that down and see if I can put something into the Moodle on that, because I think that's a very interesting question.
Yes, and also we from think tanks will try also to identify some resources on that. We incorporated some of them in our course on funding models that many of you took last year, but they are not very updated, I guess. So we will try to help with that, and also with focus in Latin America. Okay, here is one that Vanessa shares from IDB. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Let's see if we can also find something more new or newer. Okay, so we're almost on time. I don't know if you have any other question. Just I would like to take advantage that some of the colleagues that I'm working with are here to ask you, Marc-Andre. The final question from my side is, in this, you talked about culture and also about the asking process, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the role of the senior researchers in approaching donors? Because some organizations face some challenges in trying to involve these people which are very good at doing research and excellent academic skills, but they do not get engaged in raising funds. And yeah, maybe it might be a little bit similar to the question about the role of the board and how you can engage the boards. But I don't know if from your experience you have any specific situation or tip you can share on how to engage the more senior staff in fundraising.
That's a good question. I think there are different aspects. It's not totally like with the board, because I think the senior researcher are those who have a lot of the experience, you know, of the work of the think tank. Now, I think it's, first of all, the first step would be, would the senior researcher be open to have contact with funders? You know, but I think this is the first question I always ask. Because sometimes people say, oh, no, I just want to do my work. You know, it doesn't have to be the research. It's also like the project person who is in the field or whatever in different organizations. But if you have like the okay, then what my experience is, and this is also what I do as a fundraiser a lot, when I approach an organization and I know that the senior researcher is open, or the general manager of a project or whatever, I can say, you know, listen, I can organize a meeting, you know, with the senior researcher, and this opens up a lot the doors, you know, to the donors. Oh, I get to meet the senior researcher, because it's like, you know, giving them incentives. Like I said, it's not only about the research paper, you know, the offer, but I offer an incentive, something emotional. I get to speak with a person who's doing the research, for example, as a donor. And so it's like on a personal level. And this is something that I would encourage a lot. If the senior researchers are available, then it's like the door opener is the fundraiser, and he enforces the offer by offering also a meeting with the senior researcher on a personal level. But we only do this, let's say, for example, if somebody gives a large donation. What we do is we have like maybe, let's say, using the terms of think tank, the senior researcher speaking at an event and sharing his experience for some inviting guests we invite. But like, say, the meetings one-on-one are for good donors, or maybe to open up a large donation. Does that help?
Yes, it helped. It helps a lot, and I invite the colleagues to, if they want to deepen in any of the topics that we have addressed today, I invite you to use the Moodle platform to pose your questions. Okay, so if anybody else have any other questions, I will recommend we stop here. As usual, the presentation is already available in the Moodle platform. The recording will be available in the next hours, and we invite you to share it with your colleagues in your organization so more people can benefit from this discussion. And I would like to thank a lot Marc-Andre for a very interesting presentation, and also for taking these questions that some of them are very related to the topic that you introduced today, but others come from a different set of inquiries and challenges that think tanks face in terms of fundraising. So I hope you will continue an interesting discussion through Moodle. Marc-Andre, I don't know if you want to add anything else in order to close the session today.
Yes, unfortunately, I wasn't able to see all of you. This is I have to say, my first time I'm doing a webinar, with such a broad audience across so many kilometers. But thank you for your feedbacks. And like I said, I'm going to do some homework here and also look for some information which I'll post on Moodle. But if you have questions after this webinar, please feel free to put them there, and I will see that I can answer your questions so that you can raise more funds for your think tank.
Great then. So thanks, Marc-Andre, again. Thanks everyone for joining us. We will be sharing information about our fourth webinar very soon. Let me advance you that it will have a different dynamic. It will be more a panel of speakers rather than one single trainer or facilitator. Remember, the topic is about how to engage, how to work with governments and gain government support. So we are planning this for probably September, but you will receive more information soon. Okay, thanks everyone, and have a nice day and have a nice evening,
Yep.
Marc-Andre. Thank you very much.
Thank you also from my side and for your patience, and we'll stay in touch. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.